It's not what you think. Well, I have been doing electrical work, but it's not what you think. Watch till the end of the video to find out what's going on. Hi, I'm David. Welcome to LeisureBit, and today we're going to be fitting a MaxxShade Deluxe to replace a skylight at the back of the van. Before we get on with the install of replacing the skylight with a roof vent, there were two reasons for me replacing the original. Firstly, if I was parked slightly downhill and there was a lot of rain, it pooled and then I would get a small leak. It was basically just going above the threshold and it would start to drip from the skylight. Rather than repair this, I've decided to replace it with an active roof vent, given the importance of good ventilation in the vehicle. Ventilation is crucial for several reasons. Firstly, the health benefits. Proper ventilation helps remove stale air and bring in fresh air, reducing the concentration of pollutants, allergens and pathogens. This can lead to better respiratory health, improved sleep and enhanced concentration. Secondly, preventing respiratory infections. Good ventilation can help reduce the spread of respiratory infections, including COVID-19 and flu, by diluting and removing virus particles from the air. Number 3, moisture control. Ventilation helps control moisture levels in your leisure vehicle, preventing things such as condensation, dampness and mould growth, which can cause damage and negatively impact your health. Number 4, comfort and well-being. Fresh air can improve overall comfort and well-being by maintaining optimal air quality and temperature. I bought the MaxxFan Deluxe 400x400 in clear/tint, which I paid just under £300 for, and I also purchased the Maxxshade Plus Blind, which was an additional £85, and that one included the LED lighting. It's not the cheapest solution, but I wanted a quality product which gave the maximum amount of control and flexibility. It's worth shopping around as the price and stock availability varied significantly. Also, make sure you get the right size, as they do come in 2 different sizes. Being an active ventilation solution, you do need to run power to the fan and to the light if you get the MaxxShade Plus. So, unless you're handy with these things, if it's something you're considering, you should also factor in the labour for installing and running the cable. Let's see how we got on and start by finding out what was in the box. So we've got a remote control. It came with the batteries and also a wall mount for the remote control. Got the instructions for how to install it and how to use it. There was a hardware pack that contains a number of screws and some connectors. The internal ceiling mount. The external mount. Worth noting, when it's installed, make sure the bits that we screw into are on the left and the right and not facing front to back, so side to side. And then we've got the actual MaxxFan itself. This is the MaxxFan Deluxe model, so it came with the remote. It's got the tinted lid. I thought about going for the darker one, which is called Smoke, but I don't know, I was just slightly put off in case it made it a little bit too dark, because you do get quite a bit of light in this particular window. One that's fitted. I'm going to remove the blind and things just that we can get into it, and then we'll go from there. Firstly, it was a case of removing the internal surround around the original vent. 1, 2, 3, 4 screws to undo. The side bit's just clipped off. Now I have got a MaxxShade that I bought with it, but I'm not sure whether I'm going to use that one, so we'll see how we get on, because we might actually modify this one just so it matches in, but we'll see where we get to. Watch and find out. And then unscrewing that allowed access then to be able to unscrew the clamps which were fitted to that one. On this one we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we unscrewed those, which then, there's a little clamp, it's a couple of screws, removes the physical fixing for the skylight. Once that was done, need to remember to make a hole in here just so we can run the cabling through. But that's the first bit done. You can see it's quite loose there. Then it was a case of popping up onto the roof and removing as much of the silicone and mastic as possible. Once I got some of it removed, a little bit of a leverage enabled me to lift the old skylight out. The first bit of that was really tricky getting underneath it, but once you got a bit of leverage, the mastic started breaking down and did allow lifting off. And once I got it more than halfway, the rest started to come off a little bit easier. I then cleaned up the best I could. The plan was to use the same colour, which in hindsight maybe wasn't the best idea, and maybe would have been best going with white, but it's done. I think it's well sealed as well. So I'm using that bit of conduit as a cable puller just to pull the cable to the back. I'm just going to pull it across here just so we don't forget to install the cable. Just going to run it down the side of there. Just going to see if I can find a little bit of conduit. And as if by magic, here comes the cable. Just make sure you've got plenty of length there. I then got the mount for the fan and then put the silicone. I used Sikaflex 522, but do check, there's lots of different ways of doing it. I did think about using butyl tay, which if I did one from scratch, I probably would use that just to make it a little bit easier. I found the Sikaflex was super messy and an absolute nightmare. If you touched it with anything, it just went everywhere, especially with it being black, it just anything you touched. So on the roof, I didn't remove there's a plastic kind of adapter that fits to the van roof ridges, which I left on and just made sure that was secured down. I then put some of the 522 on top of that, which makes a bit of a sandwich when we put that together, so hopefully we don't get any gaps underneath. 3mm drill bit, and then just drilled pilot holes to put the screw in. This one actually screws from the top down, so just basically screwed into there. Don't do the screws too tight because the plastic is relatively brittle, and if you do it too tight, you'd potentially cause it to crack or break. I found as well it just nicely squeezed the Sikaflex, which is exactly what you want to see, and it was good to see inside as well that it just kind of pushed it out and pushed it in a bit, so we got that nice seal around that. Finished off screwing it down, did an hour or so to let the Sikaflex cure off a bit. In reality, it hadn't massively cured off in that time. One tip as well, make sure you've dropped the wires down before putting the fan in, because I had a little bit of a faff because I hadn't dropped the wires down. I had forgot and had to lift it out again, which again was a bit of a faff, and if using Sikaflex, you end up with it all over the place and have to clean that up, which is just wasted time, effort and mess. Once that was done, there's just 4 stainless steel shorter screws, and they're the ones to actually mount the fan. That was a little bit of a pain lining up the holes, but I just used a screwdriver to just prise it until I got it lined up. What was great was when you actually moved it, it did hold in position, which is very handy. Once I'd lined each hole up, I put the screws in and ended up with 4 screws in there. That then secures the fan. So far so good. The only thing I'm not particularly impressed with is the finish on my silicone. It's got to be the worst silicone finish on YouTube. Back inside, we got the fan fixed up. I also put the shroud on. I need to take it down again because I'm going to actually add the Maxxshade with the LED lights in. So get that wired up. I've got this cable which I've pulled through to the back, so just now need to take the side off there, tested it out, and then ran the wires properly. So there we go, we've got the end of the wire so we can thread it through and then run it down to where the electrics are. Get this fed through now, and then we'll do the next bit down the side. Worth noting, when you're taking the roof off, just be careful because you can pull some of the wallpaper off if your van's got like this. I'll stick that down before putting it back on. And just be careful as you're pulling the cable along that it doesn't get damaged as well. As I say, there is sharp edges. Now I'll just tidy that up a bit here. Pull a bit of slack back just in case we ever need to pull that back. That tucked in. This insulation's done wonders as well. It keeps it much warmer. and underneath where my battery and electrics are. Next step was connecting it up into a permanent 12 volt. You can fit a 5 amp fuse there. That should run nice and comfortably and be nice and safe with the wiring. After I'd done that, it was then a case of fitting the flange, or the bit inside that I'm calling the flange. It's probably not called that at all, but that was the next step of the job. I also got the Maxxshade Plus, which comes with LED lighting, and the next stage was fitting that. And basically for that, you fit the adapter plate to the flange, as I've been calling it. To make it a bit easier when installing, I've popped a couple of small connections on here, positive and a negative one. Just shorten that a bit in case I need to adjust anything, just feeding it through. I'm going to drill a little hole, pop the wire through, and then just run an extra couple of cables with the opposite connection types on the other end. I've purposely put a spade and a socket one on, just to make sure the polarity is correct. You then fit it to on the inside over the top of the surround, and then basically screw the two of them up together. Oh, and you had to change the knob. The original knob's too big, so you had to change it for a smaller knob so you didn't have any problems. So that was easy enough. Just remove the knob with the screwdriver and then put the new knob on. Simples. And then finally just connected the wiring up and then clipped it up. It's probably easier if you have two people, because it was a little bit of a faff holding things, connecting things up, but I managed, tested everything out, making sure it's worked as expected, and that's it finished. So that's the MaxxFan installed in our Elddis CV20 Campervan, and it took me probably 5 hours in total. Given that, if I did it again, it'd probably take a couple of hours less. Interesting experience, and love doing these jobs because you learn from them. Do make sure you read the instructions, and like any jobs on your van, just be careful when you're doing it, and make sure you get a good watertight seal, because the last thing you want is water getting in. So if I was to do it again, what would I do differently? I think I've figured out where to put the hole for the wires through. I thought it looked quite neat without the shade on. It is worth noting, you do get a little bit of light bleed around the edges of the shade. Obviously, if you wanted to, you could silicone that. I'm not going to bother because I don't really mind. It's just a very faint halo glow. The other piece is where we took the other fan out. There are a couple of little screw holes. I have filmed them with a little bit of caulk, but we'll see how it gets on. They're not as obvious, but you can obviously see them if you look at them. I did consider actually adapting the original blind frame, but I do quite like the MaxxFan one. It's a little bit brighter and not so beige, so it works well, and I quite like the lights in it as well. I drilled an 8mm hole through the plastic just in the corner up there to allow the wires to come through, and that was through both of them, and it was about 1.5 centimeters from the corner, just diagonally, and that seemed to work well. The information's in the instructions. It's well worth reading through the instructions before you embark on it. If you were doing it from scratch, it would have been massively easier in terms of siliconing and things like that. Because it was a replacement one, it introduced quite a bit of faff. I don't think I am particularly good at siliconing and things like that, so I need to consider that. I don't think I'm going to have any problems with leaks, fingers crossed, but I just think it could look a little bit neater. And also, I don't think it was the best idea to use the black silicone in hindsight. I did actually have that available because I'd got it to do the job to match in with the other, and it did save having to clean every last little bit off, and I reused that one from the previous window which was fitted. But so far so good. Fingers crossed that's cracked the problem with the leak. It's not been a particularly difficult job. The hardest bit's getting up on the roof and getting sorted out. I think if you were just fitting one cleanly, it would have been a lot easier. I think if you're ever building a van, it's something that's worthwhile fitting before you get too far through your build, because you can actually get the main bit fitted and then fit the inside. It does mention in the manual about needing to cut down the piece that kind of goes inside. I've been calling it the flange, but whatever it's called. There was no need to on this one. The roof was thick enough, because you've got the roof board, you've got some insulation, and then you've got the roof above that, so that didn't need any cutting down. I'd actually drilled a little hole in around here to feed the wires through, but I've actually found they're just going over the top and coming through, so it saved messing about with that. because it all reduces the faff if you ever need to take it down. Pretty happy with it. I'll give it a full test out, and I want to do a couple of things with it in the future, so do stay tuned. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to follow what we get up to, as there's some interesting connections on here that I quite fancy having a mess around with. But as far as getting the main fan fitted, all done. So there we have it. We've got the MaxxFan installed. Show you what we do if we switch it on. See it raise up there, and then currently the air's blowing in, you see on there, and if we flip it around, we can now make it go the other way and suck the air out. Currently the speed's on 50%. Let's go 60, 70, 80, 90, 100%, and we're about to take off. Put it down to 30% there just to keep it nice and quiet. So you're probably wondering, has it reduced the amount of light in here? Slightly, but not massively, but there is a slight reduction in the amount of light. I think it's because you've not got the full opening, and it's a bit like a tube rather than directly through. I did actually fit the shade with the light that you can probably see there. Probably lightens me up a little bit. Turn it off, on. You can see a bit more light there, and that goes across that way. I chose to mount the shade that way on because it made sense. You can still easily get at the ceiling controls there. It does come with the remote control, which you can control. Basically, you can turn the fan on and off with that button. You can adjust the temperature for the automatic operation with those two, the plus and the minus. Fan speed, automatic in the middle. Then you can close the lid and you can change it between in and out. At the moment I've got the air blowing in, which is giving a nice cool breeze down. It's on 30%, so it's not too strong, but nice handy remote control there. Worth noting that you can actually get wired remotes if you want to actually fit a specific control panel on the wall. I did consider fitting one of those, but I'll see how I get on with this. But I did have some ideas on connecting to the interface on it and seeing if we can do some clever things with it. Watch this space, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button to follow up to see what other things we get up to with it. So one of the best ways to check the fan out to see how effective it is how quickly can it clear some smoke, because it'll give us a good view then of airflow. Rather than create anything dangerous, we've got this, which is a smoke machine, and that's loaded with some fluid which makes a lot of smoke. So we'll fill the van up with smoke and see how quickly we can extract it. And we're all clear. Didn't take too long at all to shift that, so it does show how powerful the airflow is. Brilliant. That's the MaxxFan Deluxe installed, and the LED Maxxshade, which has the pull along blind, and not too bad a job, and all up and running. Apologies, I didn't catch every bit when I was doing it, as I got sidetracked actually doing the job, but hopefully I've caught enough to be useful and give you a bit of a view of what I've done. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this useful, and I will catch you for the next bit. Bye.